Hello, I just want to make this recording in response to the Champions League final we witnessed on May the 28th between Manchester United and Barcelona. And the reason I wanted to make this video was really to outline that Barcelona can be beaten and to kind of explain in a series of words how that can be done. But first I just want to go over what exactly happened. Obviously Manchester United played Barcelona at Wembley and they came into the game with Ferguson explaining that there wasn't going to be a repeat of the 2009 final when they lost 2-0 I think to Barcelona, and that they had a plan and a system in place that was going to ensure that they won the Champions League. Now that clearly didn't happen as they lost 3-1. And they were outplayed for the majority of the game. And so the first thing I'd like to explain is what they did wrong, and then I'm going to explain how to put that right both last night and also in an ideal world, in fact how to beat Barcelona. So what did he do wrong last night? Well, quite a lot really. From what I could see, his team selection was wrong. So for instance, the major problem with Barcelona, as we know, is what are their strengths? Well, they keep the ball extremely well, they move the ball extremely well, they're skillful, they penetrate in the last third of the pitch, they're quite happy to keep the ball, use it, wait their time, and pounce. So the first problem is, do we need the ball? If we do, how do we get it? And if we do get it, what do we do with it? And obviously what happened last night was they surrendered something like 67% of the possession, which you could expect to do against Barcelona. In fact, teams have beaten them, including Arsenal this year in the Champions League qualifying group, when they relinquished 60% of possession, and Inter Milan last year, of course, when they beat them, much the same, and Rubin Kazan the year before when they took 4 points out of 6 against them, indeed winning in the new camp, surrendered 60%. So the amount of possession is important and interesting, but it's not the be-all and end-all to how you beat a team. For instance, Arsenal play week in, week out with 50-60% possession and lose to teams with less talent and less ability to hold the ball. So let's just deal with what Ferguson did wrong last night, and essentially what he did was he picked the wrong team. So what you've got to do is you've got to ensure that they don't get any players between your midfield and your back four, that gap in between. And to do that you need players, holding players, you need physically fit players, and you need players who can attack the ball early. Well, in Ryan Giggs and Michael Carrick you don't have that. Ryan Giggs is an ageing player, he's not combative, and he's certainly not fit enough to make up the ground against players like Xavi and Iniesta. Michael Carrick is also extremely one-paced, and although a good passer of the ball, he's not going to be able to close down the space behind him on the turn. So he selected the wrong players. He could have, I mean, if Darren Fletcher was fit and was on the bench, one would assume he was fit, then he would have been an ideal candidate to help Ji-sung Park in the middle, who's an energetic player, the type of player you need to break up the play. But I felt that they also needed a deep-lying holding midfield player, and I'll explain certain teams who've got that later on, and that would enable them to win the ball back. Secondly, he didn't play with the right wide men either, because you know, we all talk about how brilliant Barcelona are, but what are they not good at? Well, what they're not good at is defending. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. When you've got Mascherano as centre half, and you've got Daniel Alves at right back, who prefers being a right winger than anything else, and returning from injury and illness, Eric Abidal is left back. You want pacey players that can attack them. So I would have personally played Nani from the start wide on the right, and if Giggs was going to play, then play him wide on the left where he can cross the ball. I would have been looking for a target man as well, because part of my plan of beating them is to have some height, because they lack that. PK is quite slow, even though he's tall, and Mascherano is just not a defender. So there were opportunities to attack them, which they didn't take because of their system. So let's just forget what Ferguson did wrong, because basically when his hands were shaking last night, I felt he was a man without a plan, and was maybe too arrogant, thinking that the strength of the way they'd finished the season with Rooney playing quite well, that they would just overpower them. It just didn't happen. So let's just deal with how you beat them. Okay, you need to set your team up differently. You need to stop them passing the ball around you in midfield. They're going to have the ball for long periods of time. However, it's what they do with that that's important. People say, let's man for man mark Messi. I say not. I say let him run wherever he likes. My system would be to ensure that Xavi and Iniesta are man marked initially, at least one of them, so that when they drift into those deep areas to pick the ball up, don't allow them time on the ball. In fact, what I would do is use a systematic approach similar to they use in Italy, where 5 men would randomly in the first 15 minutes follow Xavi and Iniesta. When they receive the ball, I'm sorry to say, attack them with vicious tackles. Make them look over their shoulder. They're small, they're slight, they're not used to the physical attributes of the game. I would swap players around, and if you have to take 2 bookings out of 5 or 6 defensive-minded players, then so be it. You will disrupt their rhythm and you will make them release the ball, and that's what you want them to do. You want them to release the ball quicker so that you can apply pressure in that area of the pitch. So I would follow Xavi and Iniesta around with defensive players, similar to what Arsenal did with Alex Song and Diaby. Worked very well for 2/3 of the 2 matches. And not allow him to pop the ball up, because Messi is dangerous only when he receives the ball, and he can't receive the ball if Xavi and Iniesta are not working together. Now the wide players, Pedro is an interesting player, and David Villa, because they wander into wide areas. I would tell my fullbacks to monitor their runs completely, even if it allows my centre halves to get isolated. It would be worth it to keep them. If they go into wide areas, just follow them in there. Don't let them come back inside. Make them turn and go back. This is going to frustrate them. So when it comes to the midfield, it's a case of what system do you pick? Well, I would always pick 5 players against them in the midfield. The 2 wide players holding the touchline so that they can stop the forward runs of Abidal and the forward runs of Daniel Alves, so they cannot support those 2 players that I talked about, Pedro and Villa. So that you can, if you hug the touchlines with these 2 wide midfield players, you will do 2 things. You will stop them coming forward, and you will have the chance as an out ball to be able to attack those fullbacks when you go forward. So 5 men in midfield, 2 holding midfield players. You do not want to isolate. I don't want to stress this too much, but you cannot isolate your central defenders. You need 2 holding players, similar to the way Manchester City play. They have Nigel de Jong and Yaya Toure and sometimes Patrick Vieira in those holding roles, and then the wide players, they have Adam Johnson, maybe sometimes Sean Wright-Phillips, these players hugging the touchlines, or Silva, and that's the kind of setup you're looking to do. You also need a big striker. Unfortunately, Manchester United went into the game last night with Rooney and Hernandez. You're not tall, they're good ball players, but you're looking for an out ball, similar to the way Tottenham play when they have Gareth Bale wide on the left and Aaron Lennon wide on the right, and Peter Crouch through in the middle, and Rafael van der Vaart as the player who sits behind. This is a very good system to play against Barcelona, because they will hunt in packs. They will try and drag the ball down out of you when you've got possession. So you better knock the ball forward to someone with height. Is going to buy you time and also enable you to set up the attacks, because if you want to beat them, you've got to score a goal, so you need to have some outlet there. So that's my system to beat them. A good team in England to do that the way they set up at the moment is Manchester City. I believe they have the right system and tactics to frustrate them. They have big physical players like Company, Toure, both Tories in fact, if the other one comes back ever. Physical players who can, Nigel de Jong, Boateng, Kolarov, attacking down the left, supporting Johnson. This is the type of system that would beat Barcelona, frustrate them. So in essence, let's just sum it up. You need 2 holding midfield players. You must not leave a big gap between the central area of the pitch and the defensive 4 players. You need fullbacks who are going to push forward and assist, but also hold the areas and follow Villa and Pedro. You need to man mark or get very close around, like you say, in the face of Xavi and Iniesta, especially in the first 20 minutes. You need to hit them hard. You need to take a few bookings and make sure they know you're around. Don't let them turn. Don't let them stay on the ball. Don't let them dictate play. From there on, you need to exploit their weaknesses, which is defensive, and you need to set platforms for your attacks. Okay? So, this is open to anybody. Hope it helps.